Turn around about every quarter when you not the ceremony.
Oh, congratulations. I'm going to sit down for this one.
Hi everybody. Hello, good. Can you hear okay? Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry, I'm not used to this. I just want to start off by saying a big thank you very much for all of you coming. I was a bit uneasy why you weren't going to turn up, but thank you very much. For those of you who don't know the reason behind tonight, I've had a lot of people and been helping a lot of people the last 12 months, 15 months, doing a lot of stuff regarding pro-choice and stuff, and going to police stations, going to hospitals and going to the courts and helping support the people. And this year I couldn't really keep it up, so to change things up, because of my background is mental health, and I've tried myself to commit suicide a good few times in my younger days. And unfortunately in the world out there at the moment, and especially in my home country Ireland, and here as well, there's a lot of people sadly taking their own lives. And it's a silent killer, because I know from my own experience, people are ashamed to speak up, people are not very proud to speak up, and they've got their own issues, they've sadly made their own mistakes, like I did, and I'm a bit embarrassed about it. So I thought by putting on tonight, we'd get people together, support one another, and if there's people bring along people that are not in a good place to come tonight, and have a great night, be happy, be fun. And I've got 4 lovely, amazing speakers who has volunteered to come and speak tonight, and speak of what they know, for you to know them. And also I'd appreciate anybody here that doesn't know one another, please say hello, please make friends, and by the end of the night you all know someone, and I hope to God when you walk out that door tonight, you've had a great night, you'll tell everyone tomorrow, and if you're all up for it, maybe in a month's time or a few weeks, whenever, we'll do another night, I don't know, it's up to you. But I hope you enjoy the evening, and shake a booty, shake a leg, and we'll hear some lovely speakers later on. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi guys, we're going to our first speaker. And I forgot to mention earlier, which is very important for you all of you to know if you don't know, Suicide Awareness Month is September, and the Suicide Awareness colour is yellow. So that's why I wear the city hat, and that's why I wear the pink last year. We'll know before wearing it in memory of my girlfriend and my mom, and my father's unfortunately dying at the moment of cancer. So Jacqueline Hope is an amazing lady and does some tireless work all around Australia, going here, there and everywhere, and on her laptop, and a tireless woman doing so much. Would you give me please a warm welcome please for Jacqueline. Thank you.
So good evening everybody, my name is Jacqueline Hope and I'm with the People's Health Alliance. When you see me later, hover over the back and that will take you straight to our website. PHA stands for People's Health Alliance, and how it came about was that, as you're aware, people who have family in England and indeed Ireland, the NHS in England has been utterly destroyed deliberately. And so now, if you call for an ambulance in England, you're waiting 8 hours for assistance. And so Catherine McBean in England said, look, we're not going to try and fix this corrupt health system, which is really only pharmaceuticals' playground. Pharmaceutical business has never healed anybody. Why would you? It's a really bad business model. If I heal you, you're not going to keep coming back and taking drugs. And so she said, we're going to set up our own health hubs, and it's going to be health for the people, by the people. And so they now have something like 36, 37 health hubs in England. And what that means is that they take over, say, a town hall or a community centre, And you have nurses who wouldn't either take the mandates or lost their jobs because of it, and you can drop in and get your blood pressure checked, your urine checked, monitoring or whatever. Because everybody now is just getting these telehealth things. And so, in a way, it's been really good. The last 3 years has really impacted on mental health. And so it's now spread to 26 countries in the world. It only came to Australia, and here in WA, we set up our People's Health Alliance since August. And I, for my sins, I'm wearing several hats. I'm in the core group, and I've got the wonderful Christine over there, give us a wave. Christine and I are in the core group, and she is the administrator, one of the administrators, and I'm the public relationships and media person because I can gab. I'm also one of the volunteers, coordinators, along with Christine, and I'm now, for my sins, wearing I'm the Australian ambassador for Empowered Perth, and what we're hoping to do is to get people interested from the volunteers' point of view. When we give you the interview, we ask you to sign up. If you tell us I can only do an hour on a Wednesday from 10 to 11 on the third Wednesday of the month, that's fine. We'll put you in the database. And I've recently broken my wrist and had to go to the hospital every week for OT. And so what I would do is ask the coordinator, could somebody take me to Joondalup Hospital at 10 a.m. next Wednesday? And if you had only booked Tuesdays, well, we wouldn't ask you. But we'd ask you, could you take Jacqueline to the hospital? And you would say, yeah, but I can't bring her back. So then we'd ask somebody else, could you bring her back? We want you to do the smallest amount that you will commit to, because that way you'll carry on doing it. If we overload you, then you'll just drop out. And one of our success stories is, we were asked, please could we help this family? This young family had premature twins down in Albany, and the babies were flown up by the emergency services with 2 incubators, 2 paediatric nurses, the doctor and the pilot. But the parents had to come on a commercial flight at their cost to come up to here. What could we do to help? And so lots of phone calls. We had 2 of our health practitioners. One gave a reflexology for free. The other gave a Reiki healing session for free. We had a woman who was in the food industry, and she got nourishing meals for both the husband and the wife, because obviously all her time was down in the special care baby unit feeding the babies. By the time she came up, the hospital meal was congealed and yuck. So we managed to get her food. They gave her fruit chopped up into little pieces so she could still eat and pump her milk. And then I put on the Facebook page, could somebody help out these premature babies with clothes? And a woman literally 2 streets away from me gave a suitcase full of clothes and a bag full of clothes. And none of them came from Kmart or Target. Not that I have any objection to that, but they were all designer clothes. So these little babies will not need to have clothes for a year. And they've got a beautiful 11-month-old at home. So they're only in their 20s, this young couple. They've got 3 babies under 1. And I used to work with Perth Homeless Support Group. So I got in touch with Lisa, who's the clothes person, and said, can you help out? And she's got a suitcase full of clothes for the 11-month-old to last for at least 2 years. And her husband's a truckie. And she said, well, one of the guys is going down to Albany. We'll take this suitcase down for them. The family were absolutely blown away that people up here gave a damn about them. And that's how PHA can help. Certainly in terms of mental health. So many people are isolated. They couldn't get to their families. And we're asking the volunteers, could you just sit with this person for an hour, have a cup of tea and a chat to them, take them out for a ride? And that's how you can help. So this is going to work. In the birthing situation here is people are terrified to go into hospital. They don't want to have the intervention that is normal in the hospitals, and so they're wanting home births. But it's $7,000 for a private midwife and $4,000 for a doula, who's a support person in labour. So many of these families are free birthing. Free birthing means you have absolutely nobody there. That is really dangerous, because for 9, I was a midwife for 38 years in 4 countries in the world. And for me, one of the saddest things I've ever done in my life is to put a dead baby in a woman's arms at a home birth. Now, thank God, there was nothing I could have done, should have done, or might have done to have stopped that. But you, for 99.9% of the time, you don't need the midwife. That 1% when you do, that's when you need me. So we have got to be giving people what they want. So we're trying to get midwives to come out of the system and have the courage to be supported in giving women what they want, and of course men. So this is a fantastic organisation. In England, and we're very new here, we're only an embryo. In England, they're also taking on the food. And what they're doing is they're getting enough money to pay the farmers in advance, so they will grow the crops in the way they want to do, so we're getting good food. Same with butchers. So this can only work if we want it to, because it's called the People's Health Alliance. Every single one of you are in this room tonight are here because you've got big hearts. You're here because you actually care about complete strangers. You're speaking to people you've never met before, and you're being kind. And that's all that this organisation is. It's kindness. It used to be called being a good neighbour, but we seem to have left that behind. So please, please look into this. Whatever you used to do, you can bring to us now. Okay? So thank you for listening to me, and please get on the website.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thanks very much. Now we have another great lady, not even too far away from me in Midland. Kellie. She's a great counsellor, helping lots of women around the city, and especially in Midland. So I'll give Kellie a warm welcome, please. Thank you.
Is this okay if I speak like this? Afternoon, evening, everyone. My name is Kellie, and I'm actually coming from Midland. I've got a private practice out there. I've had it for probably 12 months. And I'd just like to start with a number. 3,345. Just sit with that for a minute. On August 2nd, 2021, that was the amount of people who rang Lifeline in one day. Now, can you imagine how many people were not answered, or they hung up, or they were left on hold? Lifeline back in 2021 actually stated that they'd had a 30% increase in the amount of calls that they received every day. On average, we lose 3,300 beautiful souls to suicide. On average at that, 2,700 of them are men. Our system is broken, and it has been for a long time. It's something that I've been fighting for a while, in the sense of being a psychotherapist and a counsellor. We are unrecognised by the Australian government. Unless you have a psychology degree, you cannot get mental health plans across your desk where the government subsidises the fee. So can you imagine all those people who don't get help? The average gap fee for a psychologist, the gap fee, is up to $200 per session. Your counsellors and psychotherapists charge on average between $80 to $160 a session, with no help from the government. So if we were getting government fees, the government subsidy, which by the way is $80, then we could see heaps of people. You know, a lot of those people could actually be seeing a counsellor for free. Instead, they have to go into wait lists, into psychologists with wait lists. There's 10,000 registered psychologists in Australia. There is 16,000 registered counsellors and psychotherapists that are just sitting there doing nothing. So a lot of the time we specialise. I've got colleagues who specialise in grief and loss. I've got colleagues that specialise in birth trauma. I've got colleagues that specialise in relationship difficulties. I myself specialise in childhood trauma and sexuality. I do EMDR. I don't know if anyone knows that. It's the eye movement desensitisation and reprocessing. It is an absolutely beautiful trauma process, and it actually removes the trauma brain and brings people into be able to living a life that they lived before they had trauma. Trauma is a buzzword. I know that. There's two types. There's a big T trauma and a little t trauma. Your big T trauma is cyclones, war, being abused, sexually abused, assaulted, those type of things. The one-off events, yeah? Little T traumas are the stuff that happens every day that build up and build up and build up. The DSM, which is the book that the psychologists use, do not recognise small t traumas as being a trauma. And yet, you can have children that could be emotionally neglected because their parents have had to work to put food on the table, but they haven't had their emotional needs met, and therefore they end up having so many what we call attachment wounds that they grow up and they can't have functional relationships, and they get into relationships where there's DV, like domestic violence. They end up depressed and full of anxiety. Those traumas are not recognised by psychs. They don't dig far enough. They just look for the little box to go and tick for a diagnosis. Your GPs will get a kickback for every mental health plan they write. Not to mention, if you have one, if you've ever gone to the GP and had a mental health plan, if you go and have life insurance, or if you say you want to go and get a job as a pilot, or in the divorces, or you want to, hell forbid at the moment, go and get a gun licence, that piece of paper that GP pulled out, that wrote out for you, will be pulled out without your permission and given to those people. Psychologists need them to get the rebated because you have to be a diagnosis on there. So anyone can open the DSM-5, which is very outdated, and be put in any category that's in that box. What you'll find if you go and actually work with a counsellor or a psychotherapist is they dig to the root of the problem. If you allow them to, that is. And a lot of the time, just talking about that stuff and talking about how the trauma is sitting in your body, you can actually have it released just by having it acknowledged. The amount of people that sit in my office and talk to me about their childhood, and they'll talk to me about what they're doing today, and I'll go, but hang on, remember this from when you were 5? Don't you think that links to this now? And you can literally see a light bulb go off in their head, and the understanding of how they ended up the way that they are starts to pull together. There's no blame in my room at all. I don't blame parents. Parents do the best that they can with what they have at the time. But there needs to be that acknowledgement of where trauma comes from and how big trauma is and how it affects people in today's life. So if we managed to have a system that wasn't broken, we wouldn't have 330 people ringing Lifeline in one day. Community needs to come together. We need to start talking to people more. We need to ask them every day, well not every day, but we need to ask them sincerely and honestly with an open heart of, are you okay? And if they're not, and you can sit with them in that space, then that's okay. You don't have to fix it. That's not your job. Your job is to hold the space, to sit with them, to feel supported, because that's where trauma gets fixed. If something happens, and nobody's there to support that person, their brain can't process that and it gets scattered. So if you remember the Windows programs when they first came out, Windows 95, 98, and you'd go defrag it, can you remember all the files scattered throughout the brain, throughout the file system of the computer? That's a trauma brain. We need to bring them together so that people can move forward, and one of the ways to do that is actually sitting with people and asking them and supporting them, and validating and sitting there with empathy. So mental health has been a big thing in my life. My mum was on antidepressants all her life. She was very detached, and it was very hard growing up with that. And it was something that I didn't realise that I even wanted to get into until I went to uni and I did first year psych degree because I wanted to be a speech pathologist. And I ended up staying there, and I ended up hating psychology. I finished that. I hated it though because it didn't sit with me. Whereas trauma, childhood stuff, under the root stuff, that's the stuff that we need to be fixing and talking about and digging through. And I understand that people don't want to, and that's fine. And that's the beauty of EMDR as well, is you actually don't have to talk about a trauma, which that's another reason why I love doing it. So, yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Jacqueline and Kellie. Another round of applause here for two brave women and all the volunteers at Howley. Well, what I'm going to do, I've got a clipboard at the back for any of you who would like to know about Kellie, about Jacqueline and all the speakers tonight. I'm going to pass it around. You don't have to, if you don't want to. Put your email down on the board. I'll give it to the girls afterwards, and they'll send you information just to get you on board if you'd like to know everything that's going on tonight. Well, thank you.
Because I have two names. I'm sure there's other things about me and other women that are mysterious, but it is a little bit that I want to explain because there's a complexity. So my Christian name's Jacinta, and my brand is Doffie. And unbeknownst to me, I was gifted with quite a creative spirit and also quite an entrepreneur. And nobody saw it coming. I was everything but average at school. And so I've gone with it. I remember once in a store of mine, a lady just saw the name Doffie on the shop here in Subiaco. And they said, "Oh, here's Doffie, can I meet Doffie?" And one of the staff went to correct her and said, No. And I said, no, and all of a sudden the lights came on. That's a good idea. I'll put my personality to my brand. And as I say, I had no education at all in business, but it has worked really well. So I've started a brand which will link in. I purposely want to link in behind why I'm here on stage talking about mental health. And the background for me is that I was born in Collie, a country girl, got polio at quite a young age, and to be fair, I don't know what age. I was never told by my parents. There's a lot of, secrets around it. But sadly, when I was diagnosed, it was like, oh my goodness, straight in an ambulance, straight to the city, what we call the big smoke then, and hospitalised for nearly 12 months with polio, which meant that I had a bad case of polio. And that's why even getting up on stage and being careful of stairs without a balustrade, I asked for help, but I never used to. If you look at a lot of polio victims, and I've read all the Bibles, I call them now, the books of polio, it's amazing the spirit that comes with the disability. And I don't think that's uncommon. I think there's quite a few challenges, whether they be mental or physical, that often these are the people that you see rise to some, even helping others. I mean, I remember one guy with polio and he painted with his mouth. I mean, way beyond what I've ever been able to achieve. There's been fantastic stories. But in simple terms, I guess what gives me the right to talk about mental health, I was, raised in Collie. I got polio. And it got me. And so the challenges there were, yes, I was hospitalised, but I was also in the day, white, large rooms, starch, and this incredible abandonment issue that has probably followed me all my life, and I'll certainly keep working on it, because I saw my parents once a month for about an hour. It was a 4-hour drive from Collie to Perth in the day, and initially they had to borrow a car. So, I'm definitely from the working class background of home life. And so I had a lot to deal with. One of the blessings of it, reading about it, is everybody else's stories. And I think our stories are so important because I learned that the matron was absolutely adored at the time that I was around the time. Again, I wasn't told a lot of information. But some of the nurses came in, which I remember doing when I nursed, for the children that didn't have any visitors. So they'd come in on their days off. There was a gardener with pockets full of lollies. I love this story because I love gardening. And he would always have lollies for the children, so of course we all liked him. And then there was just this sense of, so maybe it was okay, there was some love around me, but I certainly had that sense of where's my family, which, I wouldn't be the only one. That some children have been adopted out, all sorts of things that we've heard about, homes for boys and girls. So a lot of abandonment sense about my life. And then very, very sadly, when I did go home, I went back to abuse and a very severe home life of multiple abuse at the hands of my father. And it took a long time for me to escape that environment. They moved to the city, fortunately, I think that helped. And I grew up in East Fremantle. And would you believe, I was the one that would stand between my dad and my sisters. So I had 3 sisters and me, and all my dad ever wanted was a boy. So I got 4 girls. So there was something in me that had the tenacity to seek to stick up for my sisters. And then I tried to report it to the police. And look, I don't want to talk too much about this because we all know that at times it's not always the child that's heard. So of course I was dismissed and I was taken back. So strangely I saw an ad, probably in the Sunday Times, and it talked about being residential when you nursed. So I had the nightingale call. I can remember myself thinking, how am I going to persuade my mum and dad that all I ever want to do is be a nurse? And I loved it. So nursing then, you lived in the nurses' quarters, which meant that I escaped my family home and I never ever went back. I did have contact with my parents, but I never ever entered those doors again. And so nursing was just an amazing gift, both the comradeship of nurses, doctors, nursing quarters, and some of the patients that I nursed, interestingly enough, are still my clients today. And I started making things from my craft background. Dad was a carpenter, Mum was a seamstress, English, and I started making product things. I put a brand on it called Doffie. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But I've got these amazing stories that people just, it brings me to tears. They come and go, oh look, one guy walked into my shop recently and said, this bowl, this blanket, this teddy bear are all from my childhood. And I'm like, what? So none of us know the impact we're going to have, but I've been really thankful for my Doffie business. It's helped raise my children, my stepchildren, my own son. So from that platform, it's been coming for a while. Where I sit in mental health is I'm called to work with young girls and young women. And I've known it for a long time, maybe because I am a girl. And I don't know, it's to do with sisters. I've never really known why, but it's been very clear. And each time I go, nah, that's not going to happen, back it comes. And so I'm forming, or I have formed, Doffie's Academy for young girls and young women, assisting that bridge between girlhood and womanhood, and from all walks of life. So the principle of business, which I've been blessed to learn, will be used in the academy. So there will always be, I use the number of 20. So if there's 20 coming to any workshop or experience, then 8 of those places will be for the girls that can't afford to come. And so thankfully I've got the board members that were there 2 years ago. So we were pre-launch with the Mayor of Subiaco, Penny Taylor, just before COVID hit. So things were put on hold again, which didn't do my mental health well. I sadly came out of domestic violence in a marriage, which I certainly did not see coming, fairly recently. So a bit of a challenging life, but as I say, there's lots of people. I really like the way Martin said it. We don't know who's sitting beside us. We don't know people's stories, and the best thing we can do is reach out, not try and solve it, but just to help people. So that's my calling, and the reason I believe it is because I believe that young girls, young women need us. There will be a lot of women represented, so there is some fantastic skills, professional and business women of different cultures too, which I'm really keen to have. So an Aboriginal elder that's known me for a long time, a lady from Iran, just different aspects of womanhood in their relation, you know, in their culture too. So it is really exciting. I'd love anyone to ask me questions, not right now, but if you want to come and have a talk to me, you're very welcome. And yeah, it will be, as I say, to actually help assist them, because at the stage, we are the ones that make babies. Well, we get help to make them, but we birth them. So yeah, I'd really like anyone who wants to have a chat, please come and talk to me. And Doffie's Academy.
Thank you, Danny. Now we have another amazing lady. I've known this lady for quite a while now, doing what we've done for helping people and around the city the last 2 years. She's a mother, a very passionate woman around the cause, trying to help people in Perth. So please give it up for a lovely lady. Dominique, please.
Introduction, thank you. Yeah, my name's Dominique Mimnagh, and just a brief bit about my background is I was a high school teacher for many years until I got mandated. I briefly went back to schools when the mandates were lifted, but I didn't have very good experience because I'm a little bit outspoken, to say the least, and got myself in trouble a few times. And I'm not ashamed to say that, and I never will be.
Love you, dog.
Yeah.
Well, good on you.
So yeah, my bubble was burst 3 years ago when Mark McGowan said he was going to mandate the injection. It didn't sit well with me at the time at all, and I've never been a political person, never really known much about what's going on in the world, but I tell you, I know a bit now. So, yeah, I've been part of a few things. The first thing I was involved with was lobbying local council, and then I realised the level of corruption just at local level. So God knows what it's like at federal. So then I went into doing stuff with the Reignite Democracy Australia, and then I was part of an election campaign for Australian Federation Party. And then I thought, right, what can I do now? I thought, I'm going to help Judy Weilerman. I'm going to donate 1 day a week to helping her. And she came to me with a few other people, and she said, I've got an idea. I thought, okay, what's this idea? And she said, well, we want to start a newspaper, or we want to bring a newspaper to Australia. I said, all right, tell me a bit more about that. And It was to form a bridge between what we knew and what everybody else really didn't know but needed to know.
Good.
So that's why we started the Light. Now this is in England, it's in the UK, it's in Ireland, and there's a version in Canada and there's a version in Germany.
Very good.
So if you don't know what it's about printing the stuff that the mainstream media ignores or they literally lie about.
Yeah.
So we're hoping this can help mend relationships. It's not about saying we're right, you're wrong. It's not about that, because that only creates more division. But this just helps us maybe avoid arguments with people, because we can just leave them a copy of this to read on their own. And having something printed, it's tangible, it can be left somewhere. I've lost my train of thought. Yeah. So rather than getting in arguments with people, we can just leave a paper and let them read it in their own time. So it's bringing thousands of people together across WA. Okay, this is a real community effort, and it's providing companionship for each other. You know, I don't know about you, but my mental health over the last 3 years has been on a real roller coaster. And this week, I burnt myself this week quite badly on my leg. I poured hot water over me, so I wasn't in a good space but what we know is quite overwhelming at times. It's a lot to have on your shoulders, what we know. But sometimes we've just got to switch off, put the phone down, not look at the next video, not read the next text, especially if we're feeling a bit fragile. Okay? There's a time and a space, and when you're feeling good, then you can help other people. But we can't help anybody if we're not in a good space ourselves. So, we're in a bit of an echo chamber at the moment, especially on social media. We know how much we're getting censored. So, this helpfully brings us out of that echo chamber. We've got over 400 volunteers in WA alone. We've got 40 hubs, and we cover most country towns and the cities. We are lacking a bit in the city in Perth. We've had a few volunteers drop out, so that area is not being covered as much as we would like it to be. We've got hundreds of awake businesses now stocking the paper. Our first issue, we printed 25,000 copies. Second issue, we printed 43,000. Third issue, 65,000. All issues have run out of stock. And our fourth issue, we've just printed 105,000 copies. We've got pallets holding up to 15,000 copies being shipped interstate. We've got hubs now forming in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia. Half of our print is now going interstate. And distribution is growing rapidly. This is wanted and it is needed. We've got Monica Smith, I don't know if you know Monica Smith in Victoria, who's part of Reignite Democracy Australia. She was seen holding the light recently. It's done wonders for us. And Dr. Peter McCullough as well was holding a copy of the light. And we've been inundated with response since then. So that's great news. The paper's free, but it's not free to print. There are no paid positions in the light. Okay, so all money goes to printing and it goes to transport costs.
So I'm here.
Good, excellent. How can you get involved? So you can go to our website, you can nominate to distribute, you can become a relay driver. I distribute in my local area. I take 200 copies and I get rid of them like that, and it's no big deal because I kill 2 birds with 1 stone most of the time. I'm going to the shops, I take some with me, I distribute in my local area. Okay, now, 9 out of 10 times I ask, is it okay to leave it? Sometimes I'm a little bit naughty, and I just leave it. Don't tell anyone. But it's no big deal. It's not a real imposition on your life, okay, to be a distributor. But it will make a difference. Now I've not brought my phone up here. I wanted to read something to you, but I've not got my phone, so it's going to have to come from my head. So advertising, we get 20% of our income from advertising. So obviously it's not enough, so we do rely on donations. Now we've had some very generous donations, but they're not going to last forever. And we want to keep going. You know, the people that are in the committee now are very dedicated, and we want to keep them, you know, printing this. So if you can afford to donate, might be just a cup of coffee, that would be fantastic. You might donate with your time, that's great. So I've got 2 clipboards at the back. If you want to sign up to distributing, please let me know and I can give you the form to sign. If you want to go to the website's www.thelight.australia.com. And the reason I do this is, and this is what I've got to come off my head, so a lady came back to us and she said her mum thought she was the biggest conspiracy theorist going, and she's been disbelieving her for a few years now. And then she comes home one day and she went, "You'll never believe it." She said, "I've read this really interesting paper today." And the woman goes, "Oh yeah, okay, Mum. Yeah, what was it about?" She said, "I think the government have been lying to us." And the daughter went, "Really?" And she said, "So Mum, are you going to get your 5th? Are you going to get your 5th booster?" She went, "Absolutely not." So that's why I get involved in this.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dominique. Another round of applause here for a brilliant woman, Dominique. Now, just to let you know, for one of the main reasons tonight that I had a visionary out for the $25. As you all know, as some people have asked, what's the money for? Well, for the few people that don't realise, this great guy is here. It's their living and they need to be paid. And they've been very kind. They've been very kind to, do it for a good price. The Irish Club needs to be looked after too. So after that, I came up with the idea, if I could fill this place, please God, and thanks all very much for coming tonight, that we could give some money back to people in need. So, thanks to you all for coming tonight and paying the money and the extra people that have come for me to manage to be able to do this. There's a lovely lady here who does an awful lot of work here in Subiaco for the starving, for the hungry. And she represents a place called Earthwise. Now, in my hands, thanks to you people, it's not for me, it's thanks to everybody here. I've got $250 of a donation to Jenny. So Jenny, would you come up here, please? I visited this woman about 2 weeks ago and I was introduced to her place, which is only up the road actually. She helps the poor people, clothes them, feeds them, and does a lot. So, you might say a few words, Jenny, about your lovely place up the road so people know about it.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm from Earthwise. I work at Earthwise in Subiaco. Right, to go closer. Much closer. No, how embarrassing. So I'm a coordinator at Earthwise, but I guess I was here because about mental health as well. So I'm really concerned about people's mental health. My daughter took her life in 2019, and her dad had taken his life 3 years before her. Before him was his brother. Before that was his grandmother. It was a pretty horrific time for that family on that side. But for us, I lived with my daughter whose first suicide attempt was 10 years old. So, mental health, suicide prevention is really important. I think for all of us, COVID has fucked people around, I think, to say the least, for lack of better words. So, at Earthwise, we are in Subiaco, but Subiaco doesn't mean that we're full of rich people. We have pockets of everyone here, and it touches everyone, our mental health. But it's not just because we're rich or because we're poor. It's about how we feel inside. So at Earthwise, I want to provide an opportunity for people to be able to come, to have a place where they can be in the garden, be in an op shop, be anywhere where they're at least connected. Because if we don't connect to each other, we're fucked, for lack of better words. I really appreciate that you're doing something for us, but we also want to do stuff for each other. So if anyone is in Subi, Earthwise is at Bagot Road, Old Pink Church. We have a permaculture garden, and we have an op shop, and we have lots of art.
Just finished my colour.
Not me. It's heritage listed as pink. That's not my fault. Thanks. I'm going to shut up. Oh, sorry.
Lovely. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'll shut up. Thank you.
Okay, we're not finished. My lovely new friend down there, Jacqueline Hope, told me a good few weeks ago about another lovely lady in Bayswater, helping the homeless, collecting food, collecting clothes, and collecting God knows what. Now, when I heard about this lady's personal experience, I thought, bloody hell, my God, I was just flabbergasted. I'm not going to tell you because it's too personal and it's downright disgusting. So unfortunately, she's not being able to make it tonight for personal reasons. So I've asked Jacqueline to come up, because Jacqueline introduced me to her. And thanks to all of you here, we're going to donate another $250.
First of all, can we have a really big hand for Martin, please?
Yeah.
So this money is going to go to Perth Homeless Support Group. Jed isn't here today because tomorrow morning is their really big day. Down at Moore Street in the city, they will serve 200 people with clothes, with food, with water. Basil Simplus, the mayor of the city, in 2019 blocked all of the water fountains in the city. So at 40 degrees, these homeless people, rough sleepers, come in and drink the water. Shame on them. This is a not-for-profit organisation. I worked with them for 5 years. The only reason I'm not doing that every Sunday morning now is because in 2019, Basil Semplus said, if you don't force your volunteers to take the vaccine and wear masks, I'll take your accreditation off you and you won't be able to help the homeless. I couldn't do that to my body, so I no longer go down there, but I support her at every turn. I promise you, every single solitary penny goes to homeless. And I want to tell you this story because it's amazing. This Perth Homeless Support Group was started by two gay guys who own a hairdressing salon in the town city in Northbridge, called Hair Boss. They used to, at the end of their working week, which is Saturday, go into Northbridge and get a jar and something to eat every week. And they would pass these same homeless people week in, week out. And this one day they saw a very young boy sitting on the street, it's 40 degrees. So they sat down on the street next to him and they said, "What's your story, pal? What can we get you?" He said, "I'd love a bottle of water." So they got him water and a sandwich and listened to his story. And then they got up. Now these guys are now in their late 60s, and Ron is the sort of like softy of the bunch, and Michael's the hard nut. And Michael said, "You know, somebody should do something about this." So Ron stopped. He went, "Where there's somebody." So they started off with a table in their shop. People would bring tins of food and little bits and pieces, and they call it outreach because they used to go around the streets on a Sunday finding these homeless people in the doorways. That's grown into this big organisation that is now, and they've got a depot in Bayswater. They've got 4 big vans, most of which have been donated from various sources. And now Jed Fay and her husband Aaron, and I can tell you this story because she goes around to clubs and tells it. This is her personal story. She was on the streets from age 15 to 18 because it was safer for her to be on the streets than be at home. Her mother kept her in a cage and fed her dog food. The only reason she kept her was because she was getting the money off the government. She's risen from being a homeless kid to the CEO of this organisation. She's amazing. So please, if you have clothes that you don't need anymore, good clothes, shoes, if you go down to Moore Street every single Sunday, they're helping the homeless. They always need volunteers. They're on Facebook. They will be so thrilled with this. Martin, you're a star. Thank you.
Solidarity. Anyone like to little bit ladies like a hand? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, that was when all the people wanted help this year and asking me for help, I had to pull back and I came up with this idea. It was kind of my vision and my hope that there would be 200 people in this room and I could collect $5,000 and we could turn, after expenses, hand out a lot more money to people in need. So I sincerely can't appreciate enough for you all turning up and helping with the money. You've seen where the money's gone now. I don't have it, you know, but I just want to say this because some horrible stories have been said. You hear Chinese whispers, I've done this and I've done that. You'll always get a couple of unfortunate negative stories. But you've seen what we've done tonight, and I had a vision this, maybe do this once a month. I don't know what you think, so I can help give money back to these lovely people that need help. I think you all know here, as far as I'm concerned, when you see these poor programs today, every one of us are loaded. We're all millionaires. When you hear these stories here about these poor people, I mean, if you go down to Moore Street in the morning, you have to look in the mirror and think to yourself, well, I'm loaded really. And you're looking at these poor people, and you got people whinging about paying $25 to come to an event tonight to hand over to give to the poor. Personally, I just don't get people's mentality, but you're always going to get a couple of negative bunch. So I leave it up to you. If you would like to do it for in another month, 6 weeks, and bring a friend, and let's double the money, let's be able to help the community. I'll leave it up to you. And thanks very much for coming tonight, and Family's going to sing now. Thanks very much.